Welcome to the King Connections podcast. I'm your host, King, and I'm sitting here with Marilyn O'Hearn. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You are. Thank you.
So how you doing today, Marilyn?
I'm doing great. And you?
Doing great. Thank you for joining me for the podcast.
My
So I like to
pleasure.
begin the podcast by asking my a question I call to kind of see where you are in your spiritual energy number. And that is from 0 being life sucks to 10 being life is awesome. Where would you say you are right now?
I'd say I'm an 8 or a 9. Yeah, thanks. And that's thanks to some spiritual practices, and because otherwise the news from day to day may not always be so good. I mean, there's a lot going on in the world that I could be focused on and upset about, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the reason why I asked that question. When I have my meetings and when I've done my events, I always ask that question because I want to see with everything being energy, if there's any twos or threes in the room, I always ask them to leave because I believe
Mm,
they're not going to be engaged. They're going to not be present,
yeah,
and I don't really want that energy in the room. But when
sure.
I have eights and nines and tens, and I know that's where miracles can happen. Anything's possible.
Yeah, love that.
So thank you for indulging me with that question.
You bet. And how's your energy, spiritual energy today, King?
I'm a 10.
All right.
Yeah, I don't see any point of choosing any less number because it's a choice. And to your point, I'm gonna let myself be at the whims of society and news, and I'll definitely stay around a 2 or 3. But I
Yeah.
refuse to let that enter, as Joel Osteen says, I have no vacancies when it comes to entering my mind with that information.
hmm hmm Well said. Thanks.
So my first question is, what do you see as your purpose in life?
My purpose in life.
Yes.
hmm I believe that I'm called to renew, discover, and develop, and and the vision, the so that we can all live, reaching our highest potential in prosperity and peace.
Excellent. Excellent. I like that. You know, that's why I really love doing these interviews. We get a chance to talk to conscious leaders who I have several of my purposes and principles in alignment with. Speaking of which, as we talk about conscious leaders, that term gets thrown around a lot in
hmm
today's world. And I'm always curious to know from folks who are actually practicing conscious leadership, how would you define conscious leader?
Yeah, I think that for me, a conscious leader, it starts with self awareness. And then I believe conscious leaders are called to be living out their purpose so that we have quadruple bottom line results. And that is people number one, that we're taking care of our people. We're taking care of our planet is another piece. So people tend to think about bottom line results being profit. Well, profit or prosperity is part of it, but it's also about people and planet, and purpose is considering future generations. So, I want to be connected with other leaders who are out to make a positive difference, not just for themselves and their organization, that their profit, but concerned about future generations and the people that are with them and that they're impacting, and the planet.
Absolutely. Excellent. Excellent. Now, what are you most grateful for?
What am I most grateful for? That's, I mentioned spiritual practices, King, and I start and end my day with journaling my thanks. And it always starts with God's light and love, being thankful for that, number one. I'm a woman of faith. And then my friends and family. And then third, I would say our clients and business. I feel like it's a partnership.
Excellent. Excellent. I always like to ask that question because to me, it's how I understand how people think and how people function.
Mhm.
You know, because if a person doesn't have a grateful spirit, then again, I just learned from my connecting with folks over the years that that's not generally a person I'm going to have a great conversation with.
Yeah.
But so thank you for sharing that as well.
Yeah.
And let's talk about over the years and talk about your business before and what you're grateful for in that space. What inspired you to become a coach? And what is the mission of your executive coaching services?
Hmm. I first read about coaching in a systems journal. So my postgraduate training is in systems work. So even when I work with individuals, it's not just looking at one person, but how that they impact the whole team, the organization, their family, their community, and vice versa, how those elements impact them. And so I first read about coaching there, and then I read about it in my local newspaper. This was in 1998. And then I saw something about an organizing meeting and went and just fell in love. So I was already trained to work with people for their development, but I thought this is a better way. I really love the sense of partnership about it. And again, it's to serve this vision of all people being able to reach their full potential and live in prosperity and peace. That's my vision. And the purpose, as I mentioned, is to renew, discover, and develop. And people have said renew, and how does that fit in? That's really, I think that there's so much bombarding us, so much information, so many different pressures that people can feel depleted if they're not plugged in, if they're not plugged in spiritually, if they're not taking time to renew and don't have some practices around that. So I think it can start with renewing.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Now you've had coaching clients from over 40 countries in the world. And I'm
Yes.
curious to know, is there a common thread or do you see significant differences in uh, C-suite executives in other countries that's different from America as far as their level of consciousness and awareness and accepting that as a model to implement to their companies?
Hmm. Oh, that's a great question, King, because lots of times people ask about differences. So you're asking about the commonality. And I would say, the commonality of the executives and the teams that I coach and coaches that I mentor and supervise around the world is they are aware enough to know that there's still room for development, right? And humble enough to know there's still room for development, even if they're at the top. And they want that. They want to continuously develop. So that's the commonality. And then there are lots of cultural differences, as I'm sure you can imagine, in terms of how direct of communicators they are and how hierarchical their organization, their culture is, things like that. But I also want to say, in terms of the women executives and leaders that I coach, I find it interesting that worldwide, sometimes they can take that humility too far. I especially notice this with women, but some men also, and that they have a hard time then communicating their successes and their achievements. And so that can, and even speaking up, because sometimes women have been taught to be more in the background culturally.
Is there one client from a particular country that you found to be most interesting? I'm sure you don't have a favorite, but just one that quickly comes to mind as you thought was just really fascinating, either from a cultural or the mores that kind of stood out in your mind that was different from maybe some
Mm.
other clients.
Yes, most clients come with goals, or we do a 360 interview process where we get feedback from their stakeholders, their fellow executive team members, their direct reports, etc. And then they would come up with goals based on their areas of strength and areas for development. I had one client who was originally from the Middle East, and a different religion than me, and also a different gender. So lots of differences. And their goal, they had already, mastered so many things as a leader, how to delegate effectively, how to communicate, how to effectively form and manage teams, et cetera, all the business aspects of being a leader. And their goal was just to be love more in their workplace. Mhm.
Interesting.
So that was really an amazing experience. And just after our first session, they said, I just want to thank you because I just feel like we have this deep connection. And, they were able to go deep fast and really come from that, as we've talked about with conscious leaders, and you, King, that servant's heart, um, that they really wanted to be of service and to kind of radiate love in their work environment.
That's a very interesting story. I love that because I look at my life, my goals now is really do all things with love. And that love be the force that I connect with, the energy I connect with and live through and stay on that frequency as much as I can. So that's my daily quest. Not to say I live it, but that's my quest is always to be in alignment with love as much as possible. So thank you for sharing that.
I can relate to that too. So I have 4 key values that I physically step into. I have a physical stance for each one. I do that multiple times during the day before we started our call. And then I go to the middle. So they're like 4 corners. And then I go to the middle, and it's like, receiving and giving that light and love. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you've written a book, you're an author, so congratulations on that.
Thank
book's
you.
called Breaking Free from Bias.
Yes.
So tell me about the book as far as what the book's about. Then I'm also curious to know about what was your experience like in actually writing the book as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to start with what the experience was like writing it. So I really felt called to write this book about bias. This was, pre George Floyd, but I was aware since I was a child about bias and prejudice and its impact. But as a child, I felt powerless to do anything about it. I didn't know what I could do. And so I really felt called, and I could see that there was kind of in the movement, there was bias awareness training, but it stopped short. It was like, okay, we all have unconscious bias. And then so some people just felt like, okay, I've checked that mark. I've done the training. I know we all have it. So what's the big deal? And they actually found that staying at that level, the research could be harmful because people ending up with that kind of an attitude. And I really wanted to communicate how we can be part of the solution, not just be aware of it,
Right.
but be part of a solution. And so I wrote the book with an impact model of, and with how to do that, and how to do that within organizations, especially for coaches and HR professionals and leaders who wanted to make an impact in their organization.
Excellent. Excellent. And so now, kind of give me a little details about what the book's about. I mean, bias obviously is about self-explanatory, but when you say breaking free from bias, not just racial bias, but what other biases are you referring to?
Yeah, so religion, gender. I've got a little exercise in here and a chart with some of them. Marital status, physical appearance. Mm-hmm. In our country and in the U.S., All of our presidents have been 6 feet or taller.
Hmm.
So there's a height bias for leaders, interestingly, which may factor in for the gender thing too, because most women aren't, 6 feet or over. And we know there's a much smaller representation of women and people of color um, in higher office and on boards. Um, so what else do I have? Political view. That's where I really can get caught up is, if I'm tuning into the news and I have very strong beliefs about things. And then my daughters actually called me out one time on, you're talking about that group of people. Mom, we have never heard you do that before. And it helps to have the accountability. That's the A in my impact model is having accountability partners. And I have a colleague who's a woman of color, and we've co-presented together, and we've done that with each other privately. That sounds like sounds like there might be a little bias there. And we can do that in a loving way. And organizations have to decide how and if they're going to encourage that in their organization. Um, and so it's looking at, I have this exercise where we pause and consider, let's say, King, I knew I had this podcast coming up with you, and what assumptions or bias might be popping up, just from your photo or something that I've read about you. And then if there are things that pop up, then that would get in the way of us being in relationship and having productive conversations, working together, then what do I need to do to manage or unbias is a term to move past that so that we can have an effective relationship.
Interesting. I
And
like that.
it starts with centering. I actually do like a minute centering exercise first because, a lot of the bias happens in our unconscious, and the research shows that we're operating out of our unconscious 98% of the time. And so doing some deep breathing and centering moves the blood flow from the back of the brain, where it's more reactionary, to the front of the brain, which is better for making decisions. You want to do it? You want to do the centering exercise?
Well, yes, actually, let's do it. You say it's under a minute? Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very fast. Okay. So you consider stand. And yeah, and have your feet firmly planted. And we're doing the deep diaphragmatic breathing throughout. Eyes closed. And just be aware of that. Your feet are firmly planted. If you're seated, your bottom's firmly planted in the chair, and you're deep breathing. And then I invite you to shift your body slightly to the left. Experience that space. Come back to center. Shift slightly to the right. Experience that space. Come back to center. Shift slightly forward. Experience that space. Come back to center. And as you shift slightly back, I invite you to imagine a great big fat dinosaur tail extending from the back of your body, and the tail is also in firm contact with the ground. And within that tail is a representation of all your gifts, strengths, and experiences that have brought you to this point in your life and will be with you as you move forward. So I invite you to be aware of that dinosaur tail. Shift back to center. You can decide what you want to do with the dinosaur tail, and open your eyes.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And I have people who, regularly already practice meditation, prayer, let's say morning and nighttime, or even the Muslim, 5 times a day. But they've never thought about just taking a minute before a meeting and doing that recentering, taking a few deep breaths. Mhm.
You're absolutely right. Thank you for that. I will work to incorporate that into my routines. Because you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. It does bring a certain amount of stillness and peace,
Mhm.
calmness to you. So I
Yeah.
don't bring that energy in from previous meetings into the new meeting. That doesn't warrant that.
Yes. Yeah. It can clear. You're right. And the United Nations leaders that I coached for the last decade or so are not in the UN headquarters. They're out in the field in where the hotspots are in the world and really carry a lot of weight. Lives, depend on their decisions. And so that remembering just even to lean back into all the strengths that they have and taking the few deep breaths, they said they've really appreciated that.
Yeah, I like the analogy of vision of the dinosaur tail with all the gifts and talents. So definitely thank you for the exercise.
Yeah, and it's not mine. I learned it from another coach, Doug Silsby, who wrote Presence-Based Coaching. Yeah,
Okay.
about being fully present.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now, my next question would be, I would like you in doing your research, I came across that you kind of create systems, and I'm a systems guy. So I
Oh,
want
great.
this question around growing emotional intelligence and cultural intelligence within the company. So I
Mhm,
kind of wanted you, if you can kind of talk through some of the systems that you create around those two areas.
mhm. It's more not the systems maybe so much that I create, but awareness of the systems when I'm working with individuals and teams and even coaches. And if I may take a minute just to explain cultural intelligence, because a lot of people understand what emotional intelligence is, but maybe don't know what cultural intelligence is.
Absolutely.
So, cultural intelligence is really recognizing and understanding the beliefs, values, rank, and behaviors of people, including your own. That's the starting place, being aware of our own. And then applying that awareness about cultural identities um, towards effective communication and behavior. So, um, especially I say it's impossible to not work interculturally because even I've had a female client about my age from the same state that I live in, and also a leader. And so, same gender, same age, um, same physical location. But she didn't get the message about speaking up as a woman that I did. And that became like her whole goal in coaching. Well, that's why she was sent for coaching is that the leadership said, we want to make use of all your gifts, and we're not hearing enough from you. Mhm. Yeah, and that then had an impact on the system. So the system was telling, the organization was saying, we're inviting you to change, to step up, and then her stepping up more will allow the organization to make use of her strengths and gifts. So it's that impact both ways between the system, the organization, and the individual back and forth.
Okay.
Mhm.
That makes sense. Well, thank you for clearing that up, explaining
Yeah.
that well. What one decision have you made that you would say has been the most significant or meaningful in your life?
Hmm. If I have to say one, I think it would be having children.
Mm.
Yeah, because wow, if the understanding of differences, because each person is different, and embracing that and encouraging their gifts and development. It's a lot like coaching, and and there's so much joy. And now I get to enjoy. I have a 2-year-old grandchild and a 4-year-old grandchild, and that's actually, even when my daughters were teenagers, they were saying, "Well, we're not sure what college to go to or what we want to do with our life," and I helped them look at their gifts, like, and where they could best use those. So I think there's a lot of elements of coaching and parenting, and it's a decision that I've been very blessed with.
Excellent, excellent. Now, I'm really big on systems and defining processes and methodologies for connecting with people. As a
Mhm,
person who prides himself or sees that as my primary business is building connections, relationships, it's
mhm,
important to me to understand that I don't just go with my gut, so to speak. I know some folks do, and that's
mhm,
but for me, I want to be able to, but my clients offer a repeatable, duplicatable process and system.
mhm,
So I have key characteristics that I look for
mhm.
first in myself, and I look for those in others. So I'm curious, do you have certain key characteristics that you look for when you're building new connections with individuals, or you're accepting a connection request from someone else?
Mm. Well, the connection requests, like many people that, turn me off, are those that are like, "Hi, don't you wanna do business with me? Can I make some money off of you?" And then we have no relationship. So I'm very much about relationship building and that servant's heart, and I was referred to. I'll just give an example of a travel agent this week, and, she told me, I didn't end up getting the ticket through her. She said, "You're better off just, getting it through the airline directly. I can't get you the price that they're offering, but if you run into any problems, give me a call." I said, "But you haven't made any money off of me. We don't really know each other very well." And she said, "Oh, well, I do. I'm volunteering and giving my time for all these other groups that are under-resourced, and this is my retirement, my joy is helping people, and I'm happy to do that." And it's that kind of selfless, um, giving. I mean, we have to make some money to survive as business owners, but it's like the people first attitude, I think. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I've learned, and that's kind of what my process is. I believe that if you give first and convey value, then someone will come back and work with you.
Yes.
As opposed to trying to convince someone that you have value and they're looking at you from the perspective of other folks that had said something similar, and you got to try to change that perception of them. The
Mhm.
person not really giving you the time to do that. So all that energy is spent around them. As they say, when you doing connections, what I realized that there's really three actions a person can take typically, and as mammals in general: fight, flight, or surrender.
Mhm.
Right? And surrender is not so much surrender to lower yourself below a person, but just accept to be open minded to what a person is saying, and not have
Mhm.
your wall up surrendering in that context. And for me, it's getting to a point where a person surrenders and says, "Okay, I'm open to exploring the opportunities with you," as
Yeah.
opposed to, "I'm guarded," or "I don't have time,"
Mhm.
in that
Mhm.
situation. So I absolutely concur with
Yeah.
you. Now, one of the things in my way of serving people is I love to make connections. I love to introduce folks to one another. And that's a lot of reasons why I'm asking these questions, so I can get a better understanding of what would be, and this is my question for you, what would be a great strategic partner for you? Somebody I can connect you with that can be in alignment with your goals, and that you two can come together and kind of co-create on something, or whatever it may be that may actually come from that connection.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. So I have the two audiences, that I serve, leaders and teams I'm putting together, and then coaches. And so for either one, it would be someone who might have services for those same groups, but not the same ones that I do. And, and we could work together to support each other. And I've done that, with some other coaches who they specialize more in helping coaches develop their business financially. That's not my focus. Or how to create their own telecourses. That's not my focus. And then, for teams and leaders, maybe people who have some work with teams and leaders, but not, they don't have the expertise in terms of the cultural intelligence and the systems training to be able to go to that level when you're working with different cultural groups.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. How can I help connect you, King?
Well, I'll definitely share that with you. But it's, I would say, more conscious leaders. The short answer would be more conscious leaders who want to share their story, and I want to learn from them how they implement their conscious business practices and kind of some of the struggles and pain points. So I believe that as conscious, small micro businesses that we are, we all have to try to navigate how to focus on business generating activities compared to serving activities.
Yes.
And how you navigate that, I think, is a challenge for us all. So to me, talking to other conscious leaders and learning from them best practices is always helpful.
That's such a great point. And to do it with a sense of balance and renewal. I do a social media post every Friday about renewal and taking a moment to enjoy nature. Because I've seen that, especially with not-for-profit or NGO leaders, that we can pour, people can pour so much into it. They're so passionate about the purpose and the vision that they forget themselves, or that, they drop to the bottom of the list and they overwork and they don't take their time off, and then they can get burnt out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So of all the things you've accomplished in your life, what would you say has been the most rewarding?
Oh, it's so hard to narrow it down, like I have awards. I don't know if you can see them behind me, and I really appreciate those being recognized. And I would say, again, I'm a relationship person. So it's seeing my adult children prosper, and live up to their full potential and be at peace, and the clients that I work with achieving their goals in the same way. So that would be my greatest accomplishments, is helping people to achieve the full potential and live in prosperity and peace. Okay. However I can do that, as a parent, as a coach, as a grandparent, as a community volunteer.
Excellent. Now, you mentioned this a little earlier, so I'll give you a chance to kind of expand on this more right now with this question. But what are some of the morning rituals that you do to kind of keep you in a positive state of mind? Because as a conscious leader, we have to admit and pull off the energy of being positive, of being kind, of being welcoming. And I know that takes a toll to get up mentally, as we talked about before, and dealing with all what society throws at us, the media and everything else.
Yeah.
So what rituals do you do to kind of keep yourself in line and focused and centered?
Thank you. So as I mentioned, I do keep a journal, and I write in my journal in the morning and in the evening, what I'm thankful for. And it's always, God's light and love, friends and family, our amazing clients and business, and the community that I live in, and so many things. And then it kind of goes through the day, and the appointments that I have, like with you today, King, and Yeah, so that's one, and then I spend some time in scripture and 20 minutes of centering prayer. So the difference between centering prayer and meditation is more just an opening up and a clearing out, and centering prayer is doing that with the intention of God entering in.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the physically stepping into my values multiple times during the day, and yeah.
Okay. I like
Mhm.
that. So stepping into your values.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
And
definitely
you wanna know what they are, the 4 key values?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Please.
so it's shared power and, illumination or guidance, and
Okay.
then embrace. You know, just like that travel agent embracing me, I want to have people experience that from me. And, and the final one is peace.
Peace.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So now we're down to the last two questions. I would
Okay.
say are my favorite questions of the interview. Though I like all the questions, but these two really help set your. I learned a lot from a person based on these two questions, I would say. And first question would be, is there a kin connection that you would like to meet? And what I mean by that question, I'm not referring to my name or my company. It's more, I've come up with a term to define an individual who's reached a certain level of career success, financial success, societal success that you admire. And
Mm.
you realize that they could be a celebrity, it could be an author, it could be anybody, but it's someone you know that if you were to meet them, not as a fan, but as a potential co-creator, that
Mm.
that connection will change your life exponentially because of that. And
Mm.
so I've developed a method and a process for getting to those kin connections. So
Mm.
as a fan, you're here, they're there. It's you come in as a problem solver, and you come as a co-creator, and you all can make some great things happen. So with
Mhm.
that being said, an example for me would be Magic Johnson.
Mhm.
I do real estate development. I'm a business consultant. Not that he's a great basketball player or was a great basketball player, I should say, but it's more about the energy he brings to the room,
Yeah.
his servant leadership mentality. He could be a coach, he could be a mentor, and we can do some great things together if we actually combine as far as what his passion, principles, and purposes are in mine as well. So, with that being said, who would you say would be a great king connection for you?
I would say Sir Richard Branson, because what I've read about him is he really empowers the people in his organization to step up, so he doesn't wanna just be the all-powerful guru, but inviting others to step up and share leadership with him. And then the impact that he makes, globally and how he invests his time and energy. I think about the organization, the Elders. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but it was Jimmy Carter and, Desmond Tutu were 2 of the members that so if countries are not getting along, they can call in the elders, or the elders might reach out to them and say, "Understand you're having some trouble. How can we help you?" Uh, and kind of try and help mediate those differences before they blow up, or if they're already starting to blow up, to see how they can resolve those in a more peaceful way. Um, and I know he's also been active in environmentalism too, like saving the ocean. So that would be someone I'd love to partner with. Uh, yeah, to help people reach their full potential and live in prosperity and peace.
Excellent, excellent choice. Then my last question would be, what book would you recommend? It could either be a book that has significantly influenced you in your life, or it could be a book that you're reading now that you find to be very influential, kind of where you are at this moment in your life.
Well, besides my book, Breaking Free from Bias, I would say I was really inspired by reading Bishop Desmond Tutu's book, I Have a Dream, God's Vision for our Future. and where he looks at, what's getting in the way, and the bias and prejudice and the reorganizing of his country, South Africa, which they have made so much progress in my lifetime. And that gives me hope, that our country and other countries in the world can also make progress, and become places where everyone, no matter the color of your skin or your gender or your religion or your sexual orientation, can thrive and prosper.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Marilyn, that pretty much concludes the interview. I want to give you an opportunity. If you want to share your closing thoughts, any wisdom you want to share with our listening audience, as well as your contact information for those who might want to get more information and connect.
Okay. I'll start with the contact information. It's my email and my website. So my website, marilynoh.com, and that's my email, marilyn@marilynoh.com. And I also love connecting with people on LinkedIn. I think that's how we connected, King.
Yes.
And let's say any parting. I'm just thankful for our time together, and I'm all about relationships and open to new relationships and partners, and I hope everyone has a peaceful weekend.
Thank you. And thank you, listening audience, for tuning in to King Connections podcast. This has been an episode. Hope you enjoyed the conversation I've had with Marilyn. And I look forward to seeing you all again in the next episode. I'm sorry. Until then, everyone have a blessed and productive weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, King.